I would say the biggest thing we can change in our social connection is where we live and where we spend our most time. Like our surroundings that we set up can make a huge difference in how socially connected we are. So we do this activity in our in-person session where we write, everybody writes down five people in their inner circle, middle circle, and outer circle. And then we discuss how can I enrich these circles, right? Like how can I make deeper connections for people that I'm already close to? And how can I bring people who are in a further outer circle to further in? And how can I prune it, right? There may be some people who may be toxic for you, and how can I prune that in a reasonable fashion? Now we got to think about what are the barriers to building a good social relationships, and this is specifically for seniors, but some of it may actually apply to all stages of life. Some people can have significant technology literacy gap. So technology can be harmful and helpful building your social relationship. So if you're relying too much on social media to maintain your social connections, you are actually making your social connections worse. Versus if you don't know technology at all and cannot do a FaceTime call with your grandchildren, it can hinder your connections. Having adverse childhood experiences can make the baseline for how we treat our social connections. But unfortunately, we can't make a huge change in our life. But we have to be very careful about what kind of childhood experiences we are providing for people around us. So we have to be very conscious and intentional about our actions with the young people so they have optimal uh, development for their social connections and exercising their social muscle. Now, many of you may have already retired or changed your place of work or gone out of the school, right? When you do that, you lose that social network. So, like if you go from high school to college, you lose your high school social network, or if you go from college to workplace, then it goes even further down. But once you retire, you significantly narrow down your social connections, and that loss leads to lack of connections for many people. Now, after many individuals retire, they change their geographical location to go closer to their children, to take care of their grandchildren or something like that. But the downside of that is they lose all their current connections. So if you have stayed in an area for 30, uh, 20, 30 years or longer, and you move to a completely new town, now you don't know anybody. So it makes it much harder for you to restart your life in your 60s and 70s. For many individuals, having poor health or decreased mobility can be a huge factor for social connections. If you're spending more time waiting in a doctor's office, then you don't have time to go play pickleball with your friends. Or if you can't get out of your house and you have transportation challenges, then you can't be as involved in many social connections. Now, some individuals have poor communication skills, right? They cannot do a small talk really well. And that leads them to have a lack of social connections because they cannot, like, if you spend a good amount of time with somebody, they are really nice people, but they're just not good with small talk. So that's a skill that we can develop. Another common reason where people lose a lot of social connection is where their spouse or a close friend passes away. Like imagine you have a friend group and one person is always setting up all the activities and gatherings and stuff like that. If that person dies or moves away, the whole group collapses. I've seen that happen many times throughout my life. that if a one key person goes away from the group, the whole group dissolves. So the other people in that group lost their social connections because of loss of that spouse or a friend or the key person in their group. Divorces are hard. When people go through divorce, they not only lose social connection with their spouse, sometimes there is an estrangement to their children, uh, and a huge loss of in-laws, right? If you've been married for a good amount of time, you not only have social connection with your spouse, but you also have social connection to their parents and siblings and friends and stuff like that. When an individual goes through divorce, they loses their spouse and loses a lot of other social connections. Uh, Sadly, estrangement of family and friends is becoming more and more common. And when you estrange one family members, all the connections that you had through that family member actually starts going down. Now, if one spouse is estranged from their in-laws, so for example, if the wife doesn't get along with mother-in-law over a period of time, the husband and the wife get significantly separated from the in-laws, then husband who gets along with his parents just fine, but loses the connections, not only the parents, but all the relatives that he had before the marriage. So estrangement of family members can take a toll on not only on you but also on your spouse and your children. So when a daughter-in-law and mother-in-law don't get along, then the grandkids never get to see the grandparents, and that creates a huge loss of social connections, not only for grandparents but also for grandkids. And this is a tough barrier to solve. Uh, Many times when we retire, we have a change in our identity or purpose. Like, for example, I've seen many physicians, once they retire, uh, their social status goes down significantly. They have lost their identity or purpose, and they lose a lot of social connections. Many elderly individuals, once they lose the transportation, right? Once your ability to drive goes down, you can't go to other places to stay connected. And once your circle becomes narrower and narrower, your rate of decline gets faster, right? Because if you don't talk to others, your cognitive impairment is going to continue to get worse. I wish we get into the day and time where self-driving cars are available for seniors like this, that they can still continue to go to their place of worship or their friend's house and things like that. Unfortunately, many seniors have technology limitations that they not able to go to their friend's house using public transportation or like ride sharing services and things like that, which is very sad. Unfortunately, in large parts of our country, public transportation is very poor, and that creates a good amount of social isolation. Another big barrier for social connection in our society is ageism. Ageism is both the way, external ageism and internal ageism. I have seen when I go to gatherings, and if somebody's parents are in their house or older individuals are in their house, they're essentially shunned, right? Like they, the older individuals in the house are usually in one corner or in their own small group talking. And if somebody goes and talk to them for 5 minutes and comes out. And the same true for teenagers and parents, right? If teenagers are gathered, they rarely interact with parents, and parents rarely interact with teenagers. So that reduces your social connections. There is also internal ageism. Many elderly, they themselves self-exclude from interaction with others because they think, oh, I'm not in touch, and I have nothing in common to talk to young people. So ageism is a real problem with social connections. I would say the biggest thing we can change in our social connection is where we live and where we spend our most time. Like our surroundings that we set up can make a huge difference in how socially connected we are. Many people who live in big houses by themselves in remote areas, they are at a very high risk of getting socially isolated. If you look at almost all ancient cultures all over the world, the houses were small, they were close to each other in a walkable distance. But in this modern day and age, we are having bigger and bigger places, and it is making it harder and harder people for them to be socially connected. We live in age segregated communities, right? All old people, like retirement communities. So usually older people, they live together, and then younger people live together. There is no intergenerational communication. And one downside of being really healthy is if you are in your 70s and 80s, and fortunately be in your 90s and still very healthy and active, everybody else, your peers, either have died or they are so weak or sick that they cannot do what you are doing, right? Like if you are at 80 years old and playing pickleball and your friend is spending time in a doctor's office, you cannot maintain your good social connections. So I tell people it's a good idea to make friends with the people who are older than you as well as younger than you. So when you're friends with people older than you learn a lot of wisdom and you don't commit the same mistakes. And when you are friends with the people younger than you, then they may be able to keep up with you with your physical abilities and cognitive abilities when your peers may start going down. So you are not alone in your later age years. So I'm so fortunate to be able to work with a lot of young people, and I'm hoping that in future I'll get a lot of friends out of it because I'm gonna be very strong and healthy when I'm in my late age years. So I'm banking on these people to be my friends in long term. There is also a issue with the lack of public spaces, right? In our society, we haven't created good amount of common areas where people just come and chat, right? I remember growing up in India, every evening, once all the work is over, all the people in in the whole family will sit outside of the house in their porch and neighbors just chat. Like if my mom goes out to get some vegetables, she will, like it's the same time all the ladies go out to get the vegetables together. And they go out to have a pani puri. It's like a roadside snack thing. So it just builds social connections. Like everybody has the same time to go out and do quote unquote grocery shopping. Yeah. And you are going there while walking, so you get your walking done. You are carrying stuff, so you get your physical activity, and you get to talk to your friends and see and neighbors and see what's going on. Now, in our setting, we all are going to grocery shopping, but in your own car, and you have nobody to talk to. So that creates a type of social isolation. I think the answer is to live in a community where people are living closer to each other. It's a walkable distance, and you share meals together and things like that. So there are communities like this out there, but we need to build more of them. We need to build more public places where it's okay to just sit and talk to a stranger. Teaching children stranger danger is actually teaching them that it's okay to be isolated, right? Like we are telling our children not to interact with strangers, which may be okay in some scenarios, but overall, not all strangers are bad, right? So we have to increase this chance of developing more social connections. Another big problem of social isolation comes from caregiving responsibilities. So many individuals are now caregivers of their spouses or other family members or the loved ones. and you are so busy taking care of other people that you don't have time to nourish your own social connections, and that takes a toll on individuals, even though they may be healthy. There is also concern of fear of being a burden, right? It's a big inhibitor of social connections. Many individuals don't want to maintain social connections because they are worried that they're gonna be a burden on their children or the loved ones. So they take a conscious decision of not having that much interaction and not asking for help. I have seen so many patients, they come and say, I don't want to be a burden to my children, so I don't ask them for any help. And I say that should be the other way around. You want to ask your children to help you because it's not a help, right? It is a part of social contract. And you do want your grandchildren to see how their parents are taking care of you, and that's how they will take care of their parents. So it's a good idea to let your children take care of you in the right setting, right? Like if somebody was a narcissistic parent with alcoholism and did mental and physical abuse of their children, those children does not have to feel bad if they're not taking care of their parents. But if you had a good, loving, nurturing childhood, then it is okay to ask your children to take care of you, to build those connections. And that needs to start at very early stage. Like I usually say, like when I'm just sitting, I ask my children to go fetch me some water. I'm a physical able-bodied person, right? Like why would I ask my children to get me a water? I want them to get into the habit of doing something for me. Once they are in the habit of doing something for me, uh, in future they won't be hesitant to do something for me, and I won't be hesitant to asking for their help.